Well, good morning and welcome to Ellensburg, Washington, USA. Let me continue with this shot until I'm sure that we are communicating properly. Are we 5x5? Okay, terrific. A little bit of a delay in the comments, but we can handle that. You're looking north right now, across the alley. And there are the three frogs. Good morning, everybody. Let's set the stage for this live stream, and then I'll grab my iPad and we'll say hi to a few of you. It is Sunday morning, August 13th, 2023 at 7:44 a.m. Pacific time. And we will begin this program in about 15 minutes. So if you're watching this in replay, you can look down below and I will have set a chapter so that you can skip right to the beginning of the program. But for this first 15 minutes, as per usual, we will just say hi to folks from all over the place and make sure that we are doing okay with the technology. And then I do have a program this morning. I got up at 5 with Bijou the cat, and Bijou and I put a little program together. So it'll be scattered, but there'll be a general, oh boy, come on now, wake up. It'll be scattered, but also I have some things that I definitely have planned. So hope that you enjoyed the program. Thank you for joining us today. Let me grab an iPad. We have 136 at the moment, and folks will continue to trickle in. Where are you viewing from this morning? Sharon in the Malaga Slide, Menominee, Michigan. Bijou. Good morning, Bijou. Yeah, he's out here somewhere. Maybe he'll make an appearance. Honolulu, is that right? It's pretty early there. Yeah, Wayne, pretty early there. Los Angeles, California. Hi, Don. Boise, Jennifer, hello. Jarrett, Virginia. Los Angeles. Atlanta, Georgia. Bryce from Tasmania. Hopes I've been well. Hope you've been well, Bryce. Hope everybody's been well. Alpine, Wyoming. Jackson, Wyoming. Kansas City, Missouri, or Kansas, I guess. Bellingham, Washington. Hi, Tim. Little Rock, Arkansas. Helena, Montana. Mount Pleasant, Iowa. How's the crackling? Let's just pause for a second. I did live stream from the backyard yesterday, and I watched the replay last night before I hit the sack, and there was a little bit of a crackling mic, and I think the connection was not as firm as it could be. How is that? Turn on some tracking here. Do we have that crackling? Sounds good so far? Yeah, maybe I made a quick motion or something. I don't know. So yeah, that always bugs me. Okay, mic is good. Okay, great. More, where are you viewing from? And I'm a little dark here this morning, but you know, I'm persnickety that way. The sun's behind the garage, but I don't know, this will be fine. Let me come over here. Oh wait, tracking off. You're like, start the program. Hey man, you know, we're in the prelims here. We're going to start this program in 14 minutes. Metacomet Ridge in Kentucky. No, in Connecticut. Germany once again. Hello, welcome back. Boulder Creek, California. Springerville, Arizona. Woodland, Washington. Squim, Washington. Todd from the Drumheller. Oh, Todd's over there in Drumheller Channels this morning. Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Dick is in the Netherlands. Garrett, the Dutch Night Owl, in the Netherlands. White Salmon, Washington. Pemberton, British Columbia. Saraland, Alabama. Front Range, Colorado. Brussels, Belgium. Burlington, Washington. Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Hi, Ben. Edgewood, New Mexico, Ramsey, Minnesota, Regensburg, Germany. What's up from Interlaken, Michigan? Seattle, Humboldt, Saskatchewan, Northern New Mexico, another New Mexico. Hans is in the Netherlands. I suppose Norley's got a new video this morning. I haven't watched it yet, but I think it came on half an hour ago. Marysville, Washington, Beaverton, Oregon. Wonderful. Scranton, Pennsylvania, I presume. Terrific. So we have more than 200 joining us, and the folks will continue to trickle in. I'm so glad that you're with us. Don't like the lighting. Thought I was being smart by getting in the total shade of the garage, but yeah. Oh, sure. Look at that. We're just screwing around here before we begin. Mm-hmm. Okay. What's that like? What's that like? It's better, but I'm not ready. I'm just experimenting for lighting, I guess, in the future, but yeah, I guess I need something that's totally. I think I knew that, but I think the part where I have half bright sky and half shadows, yeah, it's better, but the whole setup is not ready for that. Okay, well that's a learning experience. I'll remember that next time. Okay. So yeah, we still have to started a little bit early, but I was antsy. And let me check. I'll just do a little. This will be more of a diary for me than anything else, I guess. But if you don't mind, if you're just joining us, we're starting in 9 minutes from now. But I'm just trying to kind of practice here a little bit. Oh, Vinman's is with us. Jeff from Vinman's Bakery is just down the street. Good morning, Jeff. Let's do some more hellos. You don't need to listen to a bunch of technology stuff. Have I ever talked? No, I have not talked to him personally. I know about his efforts. Rogue Valley, Caslow, British Columbia, Ottawa, Canada, Red Deer, Alberta, Tonasket, Washington, that's Derek, Joplin, Missouri, Costa Rica, that's Rick, Keith and Kelso. John says, I usually watch church service on YouTube in about 15 minutes, but today will be different. God likes geology and geologists. Okay, John, well, I hate to interrupt your normal routine. You can watch this in replay, you know. Maybe your normal routine is more important than what we're doing here. Rock Springs, Wyoming, Dallas, Texas, Gunnison, Colorado. It's buffering and glitchy. Is that because I was screwing around with the camera? Or is it because we just switched from one satellite to the next? Tillamook, Oregon. Okay, well, if we have some problems at the moment, let's just give it a second. Big time buffering, big time problems. Okay. Is everybody having problems at the moment? So if your audio and sound is a problem, maybe you should refresh or leave this program and then come back. Yeah. So that's part of the technology. We still have a few minutes before we start. So yeah, my little diary is we are using the Starlink dish. I don't know why I feel like I need to show you every time, but oh, I can't even get over there at the moment. Okay. So before we begin, let me just share with you, in case you didn't see what was going on last night from the backyard. This is my last practice session from Ellensburg. And sometime this week, I'll be using this same setup over in Western Idaho. I'm not sure which day, I'm not sure what time, but this is my last crack at making sure that I have all that I need before I pack the car and I take off tomorrow morning. And so I've learned that occasionally we have a breakup with the Starlink satellites, and the signal from the little dish to the satellites occasionally gets passed from one satellite to the next. So I think when we're using Starlink, you have to be patient, and if you lose sound or audio, you can help each other to get things back going again. I think I am going to ask one more time if we're doing okay. So that was a glitch for many of you, maybe all of you. But can we be back? And I'll say hi to a few more while we're doing that. But if you can check in with how you're doing with the audio and visual, that would be appreciated. Marty's in Portugal. Hello, Marty. And Eugene, Oregon. There's Todd, geologically speaking, in Southern California. It's 5 by 5 for so many of you. So the rest of you, you're just going to have to figure out how to restart or refresh or leave or whatever. So looks like everybody else is doing just fine. So I think it's on your end there. Kentucky, USA. Christmas Valley, Oregon. Colusa, California. Cologne, Germany. Stevensville, Washington. Good, thank you. You're helping each other. Some are saying use a different browser. You know, this reminds me of the old days here in the backyard. All sorts of struggles with stuff, but I think we're doing okay. Yeah, hit the live button, it should refresh. Red Deer, Alberta. Penticton, British Columbia. Helma 26 says coming through okay in Abu Dhabi. Hello. Pflugerville, Texas. Kansas City. Albany, Georgia. Salt Lake City, Utah. People are went from their cell phone to their laptop, and that fixed it. Yeah, it's all interesting. Oroville, Washington, and so on. Okay, I've got just 3 minutes before we're going to begin, and I'm going to get my head right here for just a moment. Thank you for joining us this morning. And let me swing you over to the sunflowers one more time while I concentrate on what I want to do. Thank you. We'll begin the program in a couple minutes. And we'll see if Bijou's around. Surprised he hasn't made an appearance already. Power supply, 85%. That's boring. Let me give you something else here. Interesting. Jack, you stayed in Ellensburg the last few days. It's a beautiful town. Well, thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed our little town. Can you hear me from here, by the way? Just curious. Okay, boy, you're going to talk about Bretz. You're going to talk about new narratives in the 1920s. Michigan, Spokane. You've got Joel on the laptop. Read some passages. Keep it moving. Can I ask, are we 5 by 5? I'm going to ask one more time and then we're going to start. We doing okay? 5 by 5? Thank you. A pleasant good morning to all of you. Thank you for joining us here on a Sunday morning, live from my backyard in Ellensburg, Washington, USA. Lighting is not perfect. I've learned a couple of things already this morning, but I'm just going to proceed. And I just have this one camera. I thought maybe I'd have two cameras. I thought I'd have a way to share my desktop, but I'm running out of time. I got to head for Idaho tomorrow morning, and this is the gear that I'm going to pack up and use for the next couple of weeks. So there will be some programs coming, not involving today's topic, but there will be some programs coming live and also recorded over the next couple of weeks involving Western Idaho. So look for that. Today's program is kind of a State of the Union. I don't know, like where I am currently with learning about J. Harlan Bretz. And I'm not stopping anytime soon. I'm deep into that world of the 1920s. And let me get right to a couple of major points before we lose any connection. First major point, kind of by accident, about a month ago, maybe a month and a half ago, I asked some of you directly, can you help me find any photos that must exist of late July 1928 when the Dry Falls State Park had their grand opening? Because J. Harlan Bretz was at the grand opening of the Dry Falls Visitor Center, the old Vista House, which is still there. And other luminaries were there as well. But I'd never seen a photograph of that day. And a number of you came through with newspaper articles, with a magazine coverage from Spokane Automobile Club. That was Cheryl, the reference librarian who I made connection with. So I was so thrilled by this group having skills and time and interest in kind of helping out, that in addition to sharing a few new narratives that I have kind of fallen into in the last few weeks by reading Bretz's original notebooks, I have a little list of things that you might be able to help with. And you're like, I'm not going to help you. You're the one that's supposed to be doing all this. I'm just the consumer. You want me to do your work for you? Screw you. Maybe a couple of you will say that. But for those of you who have been with us in this YouTube community, at this YouTube channel, in these live streams, going back to this backyard in the spring of 2020, I wasn't asking you to do things then. We were just trying to entertain ourselves. But I have learned, I think, gradually that I can learn so much from you if you have the time, if you have the interest, if you have the internet skills, if you have the ability to go out and visit a site or two. And I'll explain what I mean in just a second. So this is a back and forth, and it's a rare opportunity to pool what we're learning together. And the main way that you communicate with me is by email. And yes, I'm still receiving a few hundred emails every day. And so, as you've heard from me many times, I don't have time to reply to each email, but I read every email that I receive. And occasionally there are things that are so juicy that I want to share them. For instance, I got an email a couple of weeks ago from Joel in Sacramento. And Joel said, Nick, I really enjoyed reading the 1922 field season notes from the J. Harlan Bretz original notebooks that you posted on your YouTube channel, posted on your website. And that's true. nickzentner.com, word floods in the upper right-hand corner. Click on that, and you can read Bretz's original notes from many of the field seasons in the 1920s. Joel, who has skills with making maps, GIS skills, which I don't have, said, I made a map just for myself. This is Joel talking. And I took each location, each day that Bretz was working with his 3 grad students in the summer of 1922. And I plotted where he was and where he was riding the train and where in Eastern Washington Bretz and his 3 students in 1922 were walking. And I'm not prepared yet to kind of go to another camera and show it to you. So all I can do is this. But look at this gorgeous map, he says as he tries to hold the camera steady. This is the work of Joel, one of you, just a viewer, just a viewer. We're all viewers. We're all learners together. But if I can really enlarge the legend that Joel created, Joel has red dashed for walking route. He's got rail routes, and he's got landmarks. So Joel, thank you so much. And maybe there's more from you, and maybe this kind of thing is from others as well. But this is the kind of thing I'm talking about. It wasn't my plan originally when I started doing live streams on YouTube, but I think I'm now realizing that it's a collective effort, especially with things that don't require specific geologic training or skill, but you have interest and time to help out. Okay, so people are all saying brilliant work, Joel, and everything else. So yes, Joel, one of many. And there's a chance that I'll get something great from somebody and I never publicly thank them, and maybe don't even take the time to reply. I guess that's just going to have to be our deal. I hope you've seen enough of me by now to know that I'm not in this for selfish reasons, I don't think. I'm not in this for money. I'm not in this for some sort of promotion. It's just pure learning and pure fun. And anything that I acquire is just available for free to anybody who has interest. And as long as we have that, I don't think we'll run into some problem where somebody is scooped by somebody else and somebody has information that they have, nobody's going to use this. And I'm not into that. That's not my deal. And so I hope with this kind of collaborative stuff that we're doing, you and I hope nobody gets their feelings hurt at some point. How many we got? Almost 500. Okay. So I don't know. How do I want to do this? Okay. So the title of this program is something like Bretz in the 1920s, New Narratives. Okay, let me try to be clear about this, about where I am. Starting in April, I started learning about the Ice Age floods. And starting in April of 2023, I stumbled onto 2 narratives that my students and I were fleshing out all spring. Those 2 narratives involving Bretz are Are we sure that all of the water that carved the channels of the channeled scablands of eastern Washington came from Montana? The Missoula floods, are we sure that all of the water came from Glacial Lake Missoula? Yes or no? And it's pretty clear to me and others, but not everybody, that there are additional sources of water besides Glacial Lake Missoula. So that's a narrative that I continue to play with. And cut to the chase, Bretz is not talking about Glacial Lake Missoula as a source of water until the late 1920s. And Bretz is talking about water coming directly from the ice sheet and carving the channels from the north, not from the east in Montana. So that's one narrative I continue to work on. The other narrative, which is more exciting to me than that, is stumbling onto this idea that Bretz thought that the biggest flood or floods happened earlier than 100,000 years ago. They did not happen younger than 20,000 years ago. Now, that is a major change in the narrative, and most geologists today are of the belief that they have evidence that most, if not all, of the carving of the channels, Dry Falls, Drumheller channels, Palouse Falls, Cheney Palouse, etc., the conventional wisdom is that all of that carving, all that water is happening younger than 25,000 years ago, during the late Wisconsin time. But if you go back 100 years to this Bretz work, and it's not just Bretz, here's the new narrative, it's not just Bretz, it's Bretz's predecessors. That's right. This is the biggest moment I have for you today, the biggest message I have for you today. As the story is told, J. Harlan Bretz gets off the train in early August of 1922 in Spokane, and he starts from scratch. He was invited out. This is the conventional story. Bretz is invited to Eastern Washington by a Spokane high school teacher named Thomas Large. And Large invites Pardee, Joseph Pardee from the USGS, and he invites J. Harlan Bretz from the University of Chicago in 1922, or the early 1920s, to come see this unique geology surrounding Spokane, Washington. And the story was, it continues to be, that Thomas Large, this high school teacher, wanted the experts to come look at this stuff, and he wanted to do more with his high school teaching in Spokane. So apparently Thomas Large convinced both Joseph Pardee and J. Harlan Bretz to come in the early 1920s and start making maps. Well, the biggest message is Bretz was here in Eastern Washington prior to 1922. And I have the notebooks that talk about where he was in 1920, in 1919. I'm talking about Bretz now. This is before 1922. And Bretz, I have some of Bretz's notes from earlier work by Pardee, by Israel Russell in the 1890s, by Frank Leverett, University of Michigan. So I am newly interested. So this is the main new narrative I think I'm going to be on for a while, compiling what I can about what existed both in geologic reports and other kinds of discussions before Bretz gets off the train August 1st, 1922. Because the reason I'm newly interested in this is when you read Bretz in 1922 and his notes, which we can do, you know how to get there now, he's got a lot of stuff figured out. In 1922, J. Harlan Bretz was only in Eastern Washington during the month of August, just a few weeks. And yet he has so much figured out that I'm reading that and I'm like, I know this guy's bright. I know this guy's unique. No way he can get this all figured out just in a few weeks. He didn't. He had been to different parts of the Scablands earlier than 1922, and he was reading and taking notes on prior publications as well. All right, so let me give you a little bit more of that, and then I'll give you some of my, I guess, my wish list, which is a potentially helpful list of things that some of you might be able to come through on terrible grammar. We doing okay, by the way? Can I just double check real quick? We have almost 600 watching. Are we 5 by 5? Thank you. Okay, so from my point of view right now, as I stand and discuss this on August 13th with you, and keep in mind that this is going to be scattered here, and we're just kind of learning together. And then by the time we get to mid-November, when I start the Ice Age Floods A to Z, that's when I'm going to kind of lay this out in a rather specific way. And I don't know how I'm going to do that yet, but this at the moment. Okay, so he didn't start cold. I've already made that message in 1922. I want to learn what I can about 3 science teachers at Lewis and Clark High School in Spokane, Washington. During the 19-teens and the 1920s, let me give you the 3 names. Thomas Large, a teacher at Lewis and Clark High School. Joseph McMacken, a teacher, science teacher at Lewis and Clark High School in Spokane. Alonzo Troth, a science teacher at Lewis and Clark High School in Spokane, Washington. Those 3 gentlemen, I'm not the first to look into this. Vic Baker, John Sonicson, others have explored a bit, but I think there's fertile ground here. I think there's things that you and I can figure out about those 3 guys, Large, McMacken, and Troth, that people don't know about yet. And yes, McMacken had a paper in the 1930s saying that if Bretz was the father of the Ice Age Floods idea, then his co-teacher, Alonzo Troth, was the grandfather, or the whatever, the original thinker of the Ice Age Floods. So up until recently, I thought Bretz gets off the train in 1922. He, I don't know, goes to Thomas Large's home that evening in Spokane and starts hearing about, eating over beef stew, August, learning about the Ice Age flood idea for the first time. I don't think that's right now. I don't think that's right. I think there's all sorts of stuff, maybe in print even, about the floods, or at least these landforms that seem to indicate that something dramatic was happening, potentially with a lot of water. I'm not trying to get away from Bretz's legacy, by the way. Clearly, I'm interested in his work, way more than that. I guess I'm obsessed at the moment. But the shift in focus, at least for the little next few weeks, maybe, I don't know, till Labor Day? No, till Halloween? I don't know. Can we get into these earlier influences, please? So you heard that. What can we learn about that? Now, Sharon from Malaga, who's watching right now, Sharon has already compiled a bunch of newspaper articles about Thomas Large. I know that. And she's figured out, and I haven't even looked at those yet, Sharon. So newspaper accounts maybe has already been done. But if there's other angles, or even descendants of Thomas Large, Joseph McMacken, or Alonzo Troth, are there people living now in Spokane who their grandpa or great grandpa taught at Lewis and Clark High School in the science department? Maybe that's an angle to learn more. Get into some private scrapbooks or letters or something. That'd be really fun, because I think that's one major influence that has not been fleshed out with the Bretz work. Another group of people who were a heavy influence were at the University of Michigan. Not the University of Chicago now, that's where Bretz did most of his teaching and his work, but University of Michigan. So this is the most dramatic portion of this story, which I think I've put together for myself and maybe is unclear to anybody else, but let me do it right now. I did a live stream in this backyard in June, I think, of 2020 on I.C. Russell, Israel Russell. I knew about him as a USGS geologist back in the 1890s and the early part of the 1900s. And Russell was here making maps of the Liberty area, Blewett Pass, and up into the Wenatchee Mountains and so on. But in Sonicsen's book, there's a brief passage about how J. Harlan Bretz was a high school teacher in Flint, Michigan, 1906. And Bretz, on his own, without a whole lot of geology training, bicycled around Flint, Michigan during the summer of 1905, I guess, made himself a glacial deposits map of the Flint, Michigan area. And Bretz went to the 1906 annual meeting of the Michigan Academy of Science, which happened in March of 1906. And at that meeting, March of 1906 in Ann Arbor, Michigan, at that meeting, at that annual meeting, was Israel Russell, who was a professor of geology at the University of Michigan, Frank Leverett, Leverett, and Frank Taylor. I think all three of them were faculty members, maybe Ice Age or Pleistocene geologists at the University of Michigan. You haven't gotten to the good part yet. Somehow, Bretz musters up the courage to show these experts at the University of Michigan his handmade map of the glacial deposits around Flint, Michigan, and Bretz gets invited over to Russell's home, I guess that night, in March of 1906. Bretz meets these guys. I assume, hears a lot about Washington from Russell, who was out in the Channeled Scablands. Israel Russell was in the Channeled Scablands and north of the Scablands and west of the Scablands in 1893. Russell's 1893 report is on my website. Click on floods in the upper right-hand corner. The first one is Israel Russell's 1893 paper. Here's the point. I think that one and possibly only meeting between Bretz and Russell in Russell's home in March of 1906 was a major moment in Bretz's career, because not far after that, Israel Russell dies unexpectedly. Russell died on May 1st of 1906, I think like 6 weeks after he meets Bretz. And Russell encouraged Bretz to go out to Washington and start contributing to the glacial geology history out there. And then he passes away. And so Bretz is moving to Seattle in 1908 with his new wife, Fanny, and starts mapping the Puget Lowland, probably with Russell in his mind the entire time. So I'm to another part of my wish list. What can I learn from you that I don't know now, I don't know much, about Israel Russell at the University of Michigan in the 1890s and the early 1900s? Or just the University of Michigan's geology department just in general in the 1890s and the early 1900s? Because that was a hotbed of activity, apparently. Let me give you an example. One of the Franks, Frank Leverett, in 1922, again, he's a Michigan guy. He works at Michigan. But here he is in Ann Arbor, Michigan, September 25th, 1922. And Frank writes, so this is more than 10 years after Russell passes away. The communication by Thomas Large, high school teacher, on the above subject in the 1922 issue, the title of this in 1922 is Old Glaciation in the Cordilleran Region. To the editor, this is Frank Leverett writing. The communication by Thomas Large, Spokane science teacher, on the above subject in the September 22nd issue of Science prompts me to write that in 1916, I found glacial till with striated boulders and pebbles in the brickyard near the normal school at Cheney, Washington, beyond the limits here reported by Large. I brought this matter to the notice of the Geological Society of America at the Albany meeting in December of 1916, and the following brief statement concerning it appears in the proceedings of that meeting. Quote, in northern Washington, the occurrence of a very old glacial drift, probably Kansan in age, was established by the discovery of glacial till and striated stones on the High Divide southwest of Spokane in the vicinity of Cheney, Washington. Boulders had been observed in this region, and the possibility of glaciation had been suggested by M.R. Campbell in the Northern Pacific Guidebook. Okay, so this is the kind of stuff I'm talking about. There's all these breadcrumbs that get us to the idea that Bretz knew about glacial deposits, of glacial till deposits that are older than Wisconsin age, older than 25,000 years ago. I want to try to figure that out. I want to try to figure out where those exposures are. So on my wish list for some of you, can we find this brickyard near Cheney, Washington? Something about a school? Yeah, a brickyard near the normal school. Oh, so Eastern Washington University today, is there an old brickyard somewhere? So look, I have no idea what this means. If three of you are going to go out looking for a brickyard, finding an old historic document and sending me some map of where the brickyard used to be, and then, you know, two of you are showing up in some private property and somebody's coming out with a gun, they're like, get off my land. You're like, Nick Zentner sent me to look for a till, and he's like, what? So I don't know, but there's all these little things that are out there. Okay. I'm just going to keep going. I assume we're still functional, and I don't know how we're doing with, how many are watching? 600? Okay. I promise it's going to be scattered, but it's around these themes of finding these new narratives. Joseph Pardee in 1918 wrote a report. I have not seen it. I suppose I could find this on my own, but I guess I'll ask if somebody has the skills to find it easily. It's called Colville Geology. Joseph Pardee, 1918, some sort of government report, I guess for the USGS, the geology and mineral deposits of the Colville Indian Reservation. There's a lot of notes that I have of Bretz reading that new paper in 1918 and then heading out here in 1919 looking for some of that. I'd like to find that report. I don't know how to, I haven't looked for it yet. Maybe a couple of you could save me a couple moments there. I mentioned that Russell's 1893 report is on the website right now. I think there's an 1897 and an 1898 report that Bretz has notes on. Don't know about it. Let me go to my other scattered wish list. And again, I don't want to push it here, and you're not obligated to do anything, of course. But if a few of you are fired up and want to help out, that'd be really a blast. J. Harlan Bretz taught for 1 year at the University of Washington in Seattle, the school year of 1913 to 1914. And then he went back to the University of Chicago. He didn't like the colleagues that he had in the geology department at the University of Washington. But Bretz built a house. He had at least one small child, maybe two at that time. And he built a house north of downtown Seattle, I guess in late 1913, maybe finished in 1914. And then he left and he sold the house. I'd like to figure out what the address of that house is. Where is Bretz's house that was finished in 1914? Is it up by Woodland Park Zoo somewhere? One of those craftsman type things? Curious if somebody can figure that out. Bretz built his house in Homewood, Illinois, which I have heard you can stay at. So most of Bretz's life until his passing, he lived in a home that he built in Homewood, Illinois. Again, I think also kind of a Sears craftsman style of house. Is there an address for that? I heard from Vic Baker that it's an Airbnb or something. You can stay in Bretz's house. And he used to call it boulder strewn. Apparently there's thousands of big boulders that he collected personally in his travels or something and put around his house. If you have a photo of the house or an address, or you've stayed at it, and take a selfie in Bretz's living room, that'd be fun. Railroads. I know some of you are really into railroads, and Joel with his map just has one rail line. Yeah, he just says rail route. There's enough detail in Bretz's notes about specific rail lines that I'd like to learn a little bit more about these rail lines. So, and again, I can find this on my own, but it will take me some time. And if you are really good at this sort of thing, is there a map showing when and where the Northern Pacific Railroad was constructed? How about the Great Northern Railroad in Eastern Washington? How about the Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul Railroad? You're like, it goes through Ellensburg. It's right over there. What are you doing? Well, I don't have those dates in my head, and I don't have some of the specifics in my head yet. There's something in the notes of Bretz, the SP&S Railroad. Is that the Spokane and Seattle Railroad? The O-W Railroad. Is that the Oregon-Washington Railroad? Washington Central Railroad. You're like, who gives a shit? Well, all this detail brings some of this stuff to life. And I probably will run out of time this fall, but I have vague intentions of going out to a few key spots that Bretz kept revisiting all through the 1920s in Eastern Washington. And quite often, they were railroad cuts where there's geology exposed where they put the rail line in. And some of those you can walk. And that video I did with Sky Cooley, we just walked out there. But before 1925, that's how Bretz was getting around with his students. He was riding the train. Some of his notebooks say car window geology. And he's not talking about an automobile. He's talking about sitting in the observation platform of a train and doing some note-taking about the landforms as he's going down the tracks. And then getting out and walking for a while and then hopping back on a train. So if I love some simple maps, here will be the ideal. A map of Eastern Washington, you wouldn't have to make it necessarily, but I don't even know which lines came in first, which rail line came in second, third, and so on. The ideal was I would have a map of 1900, and there's the Great Northern, and then 1905, and there's the Great Northern plus the Milwaukee Road, and so on. I don't know. Maybe I don't even need that, but the classic beginning of the Bretz story, which again, August 1st, 1922. Now, I've already said that there's stories before that, but the classic story is Bretz gets off the train in August 1st of 1922 at the Pentops Station, P-A-N-T-O-P-S. And that's a rail station on the Inland Empire Electric Railroad. Like City Rail, I guess, from Spokane. The Pentops Station. Where is that? Should be easy to find. I don't know where the Pentops Station is. Does it still exist? Is there a train station that still exists called Pentops? Is there still a functioning rail line? Probably not. I'm getting greedy now, but let me keep going. How do I pronounce the little town in Eastern Washington, Tekoa? Are you a local? Are you a local in Eastern Washington? If you're not sure, please don't chime in. Leave a comment, all this stuff. Either email me or leave a comment down below, or I guess in the live chat as well. Is it Tekoa? Tekoa, little town in Eastern Washington. How do I pronounce it? Same thing for Benge. Is it Benge? Is it Bing? How do I pronounce it? If you take the time to go through the Bretz notebooks, he's so sure that he has Wisconsin glacial till versus Spokane glacial till, which during his note-taking and during his work in the 1920s assumes is about 100,000-year difference between the young Wisconsin stuff and the older Spokane stuff. Apparently, the Spokane glacial till is rustier looking, more weathered stones. I'm hesitating because, you know, the geologists of today basically say Bretz was just wrong about all that. None of that stuff is older than 25,000 years ago. But it's not just him. It's Russell. It's Leverett. It's Taylor, I guess. It's Pardee. There's maybe some other people I'm unaware of that are mapping glacial till from different generations in northern Washington. I'd like to just learn somehow, whether it's you guys going out to a couple places that Bretz is writing about, snapping a couple photos and emailing them to me if you feel like it, with a detailed location. Do these Spokane tills, glacial tills, look different, look older than the Wisconsin till? And you're like, I don't know, is Bretz calling everything Spokane till? Is he calling all the glacial till older than 100,000 years ago? No, that's the point. Beginning in 1922, and that's my... I did this last night, but I'll do it again right now. Courtesy of Brian in Portland and Springfield Ryan, Springfield, Illinois. Here are the field notes by year that are available for you at nickzentner.com. Click on floods in the upper right-hand corner. Use promo code Harley. But what I've been doing, and I've mentioned this more than once now, is that I underline everything in red if it's Wisconsin in age. And he's talking about Wisconsin stuff all through here. So Bretz does have plenty of Wisconsin glacial till up way north, up by Hunters and Gifford, and I don't even know those towns. But he's got so much more stuff that's Spokane. Spokane gravels, Spokane channel, Spokane water, Spokane glacial till. And there's purple, older yet, the Cheney glacial till. So I don't know what glacial till looks like out here. There, I said it. I've seen, where have I seen glacial till? I've seen glacial till in the Yakima River Valley upstream of Ellensburg, out by Thorpe. I've seen glacial till there, and it looks old. I've seen glacial till up above Leavenworth, Washington. This is alpine glaciation. Stuff, I don't know if that looks old or not. In fact, now that I think about it, between Leavenworth and Wenatchee, no. Leavenworth and then going up the Icicle Canyon. That's Mount Stewart Bathurst country. There's multiple, okay, I should do that. I should read the Page stuff. There's a guy named Page who did a PhD dissertation on the glacial deposits near Leavenworth. What do those tills look like? But what I want to say is that I've never, I guess, really seen any glacial till from continental ice sheet in Washington, except for, I guess, that till that Brian Atwater was showing me in the floor of Upper Grand Coulee at the foot of Steamboat Rock. That's got to be Wisconsin. That's Wisconsin. I guess I've seen some glacial till in the floor of Moses Coulee as well, but I guess that's the point. Okay, I'm on it right now. And then I think we're going to quit, and I'm going to see what questions you have. Okay, new thought right now. That's a question. Pre-1935, before 1935, all these scientific papers by Bretz and others that are talking about glacial till, Wisconsin glacial till, Spokane glacial till, Cheney glacial till. Is all that stuff not till, but Glacial Lake Missoula flood deposits? Were they that wrong that they assumed these glacial stones were ice deposited, glacial till in other words, but it's all Wisconsin glacial rocks that were deposited by water? Were those guys that off? Because that's the story, I think. Or is some of that stuff that's written in the 1920s by Bretz truly glacial till? And is it just not exposed anymore? Or if it is still exposed, have people just forgotten about those exposures? Or maybe they've never known about those exposures because they haven't seen these notebooks. Maybe it's as simple as that. I guess I'm getting greedy now, I'm thinking too big perhaps. But is it possible that opening up these locked notebooks for everyone to read possibly would lead to a rejuvenated interest in some of these exposures of glacial till that truly are glacial till? And possibly some of those glacial till deposits are clearly older than 25,000 years old. And if that's true, then can we document that there's an older than 100,000-year-old ice sheet that's south of Spokane? That'd be the ultimate goal, I guess. Don't know if we'll get there, but it's just fun to play this. Let me check my notes just a little bit more, and then I think I'll come to you. That's maybe mainly what I had to share with you today. Hope it was worth your time. Yeah. To finish off, just because I enjoy reading to you, let me read a couple passages about the Cheney till, as I was just describing, from Bretz's first season out here. Not true. Hey, Ryan in Springfield, Illinois, major props to you for getting us going with this and driving all the way up and taking those photos. I have a more complete list of stuff that I'm interested in now if you're thinking about heading up there again. So let's communicate again by email. But I've got some scattered stuff that I don't think needs to be scattered. I think I can get a more complete story from you if you're willing to drive up there again. You see how greedy I am? It's never enough. Okay, I marked this just before I came out here. So this Cheney till, which is glacial till near Cheney, Washington, that apparently was first discussed by Leverett in 1916, but I'm not sure of that. Okay, so here's just to give you an idea of what waits for you. J. Harlan Bretz, original notebook, Sunday, August 13th. Are you kidding me? I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. Today is Sunday, August 13th, 2023. And here, oh wow. And here is Bretz, Sunday, August 13th, 1922, exactly 101 years ago today. And this is from notes where Bretz is going from Cheney, Washington to Cooley City, Washington via the Washington Central Railroad. No idea. Cheney Glacial Till, covered with several feet of loess in one of the pits. More evidence that it is older than the loess and the maturely eroded slopes. Okay, there, he's saying in two sentences, I've got glacial till that's older than a bunch of the loess that's on the pre-glacial landscape. Well, how does he know that? I guess because it's underneath the loess. But wait a minute, I thought all the loess was older than the Ice Age floods. Were there no Ice Age floods with the Cheney advance? That's two sentences. You can see how much there is to chew on here. More of this Cheney glacial till seen near Granite Lake along roadways, but not as good exposures and no striated material. Suspect that it exists in many places in this group of hills, for they must have been overridden by this ancient glaciation. And then he says, see the 1923 notes, which I'm not going to do right now. So there's one paragraph where I want to go out to this group of hills. First of all, figuring out where the hell the hills are. Second of all, finding the roadways he's talking about near Granite Lake, never heard of it. And then see if I can find some glacial till. I could lose years doing this. That's the kind of detail that's in these notes. And I think you can quickly see how I don't have enough time to go out and do all that. I could spend the rest of my career just doing this. I mean, I'll get sick of it at some point. August 29th, 1922. He's taking a train from Creston to Peach to Davenport, which is very close to the Mondovi Horseshoe, I might add. I'm going to read two paragraphs to you. You ready? If you haven't gone to these notebooks, here's a teaser of what's waiting for you. Large granite boulders, maximum diameter 8 feet, along the Sunset Highway east of Creston. Also large boulder of impure silicified limestone. What? Smaller ones of a great variety of igneous and metamorphic rocks scattered all the way to the little town of Peach, which is up by the Columbia, I think, not close to the Fort Spokane. The soil is thin, much scab rock, basalt close to the surface, no till in any cuts. The country north of Creston is a plain of basalt, no first cycle hills. Has a scrubbed appearance, but not etched in channelways and islands. Have you noticed, if you've looked at these, he's got his little old typewriter and the A is always offset just a little bit. I guess his A, what do you call that? His A key and his A on a typewriter was consistently just going up a little bit. It's almost like an asterisk or something, but his A's are always off. It's kind of cute. The northward portion of this plain is deeply gashed by Hawk Creek, Indian Creek, and their tributaries. The scrubbed-off plain of basalt with much scab rock and much scattered glacial erratics, also about the head of Indian Creek, enters Hawk from the east. I have a date with Brian Atwater later this fall, and I think he wants to go up to Hawk Creek. Now, is it because of some of this stuff or something else? I don't know. But maybe that's one thing I need to do, is figure out some very key spots that Bretz keeps revisiting, and then bring some geologists out to some of these spots and get their modern eyes on them. That's a thought. Another similar track, flanked on the south, east, and west by first cycle hills and bearing several feet of coarse gravelly debris at Laureen, 6 to 7 miles north of Davenport. Much foreign material at Loreen also. These flat tracks on the basalt are a puzzle. It is believed, however, that they predate the Spokane glaciation and are a favoring condition rather than a result of the glacial or fluvial glacial action which spread the erratic material over them north of Creston and about Loreen. No faceted or striated stones were found anywhere on them. Okay, well, for all I know, I'm losing most of you. I think I'm losing some of you because not everybody loves history. Not everybody enjoys like details and mysteries and things from long ago. I understand that. I personally love that stuff, that human history stuff. And that's a big angle to this Bretz thing that will be different than the Baja BC or the crazy Eocene or anything like that. This is creating a three-dimensional picture of Eastern Washington 100 years ago. I really love that. But I know that some of the programs that I've done in the past where I'm featuring geologists from more than 100 years ago, or Bing Crosby driving across the Eastern Washington with his buddy Al, can't remember his last name, in 1925. I know that's not for everybody, and I know it because those programs are barely watched. So, you know, this is getting into some areas that I don't think appeals to everybody, but I'm fine with that. I'm not here to get the biggest audience possible. I'm just here to follow on stuff that's fun for me, and I think for some of you. Okay, I think it's time for some live Q&A. Let me check the power supply real quick. I'll get an iPad and we'll just feed off of each other here for just a second. We have more than 700 watching at the moment. Thank you. Power supply, 68%. That's mostly just for me. I don't have the laptop plugged in. So there's 46% on the battery there. I don't know, just for fun, let me change the angle here. Turn off the tracking. What if I get in the shadow? Let's try this. Probably a stupid idea, but let's. Uppercase, do you have questions or anything you want to kind of interact with me about? If not, we're good, but what's my favorite Vinman's pastry? That would be the lemon scone, I believe. I'll wait for just a few minutes. Thank you for the question or the demand that I discuss Randall Carlson's thoughts. I won't be doing that. I've already talked about Randall. I like that he's inspiring people to think about geology, but he's peddling a specific story that does not match with the field evidence that's out here. Forget about Bretz, just all the data that we have does not work with Randall's story. So I'm just not interested in incorporating his ideas in these programs. 101 rotary power. What details can dictate the age of the till? That's a great question. That's a question that I really have. Is just measuring the weathering rinds on a glacial till the only way to approximate its age? Like, it feels like working with glacial till deposits, as I understand it, is a skill from more than 50 years ago. And we have new tools. So how can we use our new tools to get good dates on glacial till deposits that are older than 25,000 years ago? Is that even possible? That's maybe it. Never had that thought till right now. If there's a glacial till that's more than 100,000 years old, can we verify that? If we're so great with our technology and our surface exposure dating, does that ability to go back that far even exist? Susan, I have 1929 field notes. I haven't posted them yet. He's up at Hunters, Washington a lot, and he's got mostly Wisconsin stuff up there, but he knows, and he documented all the wonderful glacial deposits that you keep mentioning. So you're just going to have to be patient with me, but we will get those deposits clear. No public field trips scheduled. Thank you. Am I looking for key Bretz spots to visit? I am, but as I look at my calendar, you know, we're going to start school here in late September. Oh, we got Bijou. Would you like to see Bijou real quick? I do plan on posting Joel's map. Bijou, would you like to say hi to these guys? Yeah. Were you across the way? Were you hanging? Oh, you were. You got stuff all over you, don't you? Yeah. You just want to say hi to these guys? Yeah, you want to look up there? Okay, well, what was up there? Were you visiting with a couple other people? This is Bijou the cat, if you're new to us. Yeah, and Bijou used to hang out overnight in the summers, but he's been having some problems with raccoons lately. So he's had some fights and some injuries. So he's a little bit more close to home these days. But I think you were across the alley this morning, weren't you? Okay. All right. I was going to say more about that previous question. What was that? I'm sorry, I got distracted with Bijou. I'm sorry, can't find it. Okay. Bretz couldn't use zircon to date those deposits. How did he know? Yeah, that's a fair question, Daniel. How did Bretz know, and how did these other geologists know that they were older glacial deposits? Well, I guess one answer, based on the two sentences I read, is that there's what they're calling glacial till underneath a bunch of loess. Now, that in itself is a brand new concept to me. Is that true? Are there places you can dig underneath a pile of windblown loess and find glacial till? If so, I think that would be new for almost everybody. Michael wondering about the cause of the floods. Bretz had a favored hypothesis all through the 1920s, and he spent considerable days in 1925 and 1926 north of the border trying to find lavas that erupted at the base of the ice sheet, because he needed a lot of water quickly, and he needed that flood to also end quickly. He called it the Spokane flood. Now, when we get into the 1950s, which I've read casually but not carefully yet, Bretz backs off the terminology of Spokane flood, and he knows that there's more than one flood in the 1950s. But even then, he's got a handful of floods. He's got one major flood and then some minor floods. So I think even though he backs off of the phrase Spokane flood in the 1950s, I think Bretz still wants, even till his dying day, one major event of water that started quickly and ended quickly, but then he acknowledges there's some other smaller floods maybe coming from Montana. Could you use some pieces of wood under the till? Oh yeah, okay, nice job. This is like the first live stream I did before St. Patrick's Day 2020, the wall. That's cool. I don't know if carbon dating of wood can go back 100,000 years. You're like, you don't? Aren't you a geology professor? Yeah, but I don't know. Can I have loess deposits on top of river rock that are older than the river rock? Loess deposits on top of the river rock that are older than the river rock. I don't follow your logic there, Brett, but yeah, we're back to Sky Coulee country and thinking about getting below Wisconsin, late Wisconsin age loess, are those flood deposits below it? Are those glacial till deposits below it? That sort of thing. John says state highway soil reports could reveal where moraines were and what might have been exploited. Thank you, John. What about Canadian volcano deposits and the glacial deposits? Thank you. There's no shortage. I'll come back around. There's no shortage of angles to play here. And maybe we'll finish. What if we do a tracking on Bijou? Does that work? Yeah, but what's the point? Okay, we're going to finish by doing this. What are the angles? What if I come in a little bit? Does that help the lighting? What are the angles to play between now and the beginning of our alphabet series on the Ice Age floods? Is there enough time for me to explore? Okay, that's on the wish list. Do we have Canadian viewers or people who have the skills to get up to the bedrock geology of southern British Columbia? And are there tuyas in southern British Columbia? I think there are, which are volcanic eruptions beneath glacial ice. Are there clear ages on those tuyas? And is there any way for us to find some volcanic deposits that have been dated with modern means that potentially were erupting underneath the Spokane ice sheet or the Cheney ice sheet or even the Wisconsin ice sheet? I don't know that answer, but that's one narrative to play. And I would lean heavily on you guys for that, probably. Another thing I think I would lean heavily on for you No. Well, I just don't know the geography of northeastern Washington very well. I've never been to Hunters. I've never been to these places north of the Spokane River to really carefully know in my mind where the clear southern margin of the Wisconsin ice sheet was. And if everybody agrees on that, then we're back to the question of, are those really glacial till deposits south of that known Wisconsin terminal moraine? According to these guys in the 20s, it's definitely glacial till, and it's definitely older than the Wisconsin. And that's important because Bretz wants subglacial flow directly from the Spokane ice, and that Spokane ice is sitting there right at the heads of these channels of the Cheney-Palouse Tract. Okay. I think that's enough for today. And I certainly do appreciate you joining us here today. Look for our next live stream coming later this week from someplace in western Idaho. And this is probably it for Ice Age floods for at least 2 weeks, maybe more. And we will all turn our brains back hundreds of millions of years ago, or at least more than 50 million years ago, to the time of Baja, BC, with the Penrose Conference for the next couple of weeks. Thanks, everybody. Oh, and a toast to you. A toast to you. Here's to your health. A toast to your friends and family, near and far. Here's to all the engaged viewers who have been helping by email or by comments left down below. Very grateful to all the energy expended on things along these lines. Not a requirement, but definitely a fun byproduct of these live streams. So here's to you. Hope you enjoy the rest of your Sunday. And thank you. And we will finish with a closing shot of Bijou screwing around up above. I love you. Goodbye from Ellensburg, Washington, USA. Boy, you're full of pep this morning, aren't you? You're full of pep? You having a good time out here? Well, that's nice. That's awfully nice, isn't it? All right. What do you think? You want to come on my back? Okay. You can make it. Oh boy. Goodbye.